So far, it seems like what we've talked about has been, I'd say most of us had kind of a negative idea of what a lame duck session is. So far we've looked at the things that we don't like, and we mostly say we think that this is shady, this is sneaky, this is corrupt. There's a lot of things we just really don't like about this. But I'm here to talk about the other part of it. So Miriam, if you can put up the third theme. So basically, I'm here to talk about some of the things that can be positive about lame duck sessions. And there are a lot of positives. The first one I want to just talk about, there's a lot of different themes, like maybe you can tie up some loose ends, maybe you can finish things that got started and for whatever reason just didn't get through because like Kurt said, people procrastinate or whatever. But also, lame duck sessions provide an opportunity to handle some emergency issues. And this is not, we don't maybe want to see this in Michigan, but and it might have to do with, other states. They don't even have a lame duck session normally, but they can call an emergency session at the end to take care of business. We still have the session going on basically, so we don't necessarily in Michigan have to call a separate emergency session. But I just want to point out something. This is more on a national level, but also I can't pinpoint the exact legislation on a state, but we have just recently had a lame duck session nationally even. And President-elect Biden asked Representative Pelosi and Senator Schumer to pass an emergency COVID law in the lame duck session. And what came out of that was a $900 billion emergency package. They've been fighting for 8 or 9 months and unable to actually push any legislation through. So things didn't happen. And in our own state, some of the stuff has happened maybe the beginning of the year too, but we also pushed through some emergency spending at the end of the year that people were kind of sitting on and kind of fighting over. And I think one of the realities you have to consider with this is that you think, well, they could have done this sooner. Certainly they could have. If we would have said there's no lame duck session, you could get this legislation passed, but they don't. And this is the reality. The reality is, especially in the second year of a session, everybody's up for election, basically. Your state house is all up for election. And so they spend the better part of that second year posturing. And I think we can all admit that that's what we saw happen in the state most of this year, when we would have loved to have seen good legislation occurring. We saw our politicians spending most of their time posturing. And as much as we don't like that, that's going to continue. We have to be realistic about it. So, Miriam, could we give the other statement on this? This is another about things that happen good. So that's the first one. Okay, I guess I mentioned that one at all, that we had that Congress passed that, and that's on a national level, but the same type of things happened on a state level. Let's go to the next slide, Miriam. So this one here is, so this would be, whoops, lost me there. This something that was stuck, something that has been hung up in the legislature for a while. And this occurred in this December of 2020. And this is a package of bills that were passed. There were a number of bills passed, but this was a bill called the Good Moral Character Package, which reformed a lot of the licensing opportunities for Michiganders after they'd been convicted or their post judgment. And so the boards or agencies that would review licenses for someone in the future used to consider those criminal convictions. And now all those criminal convictions are not allowed to be considered. They used to have a statement and all this that they had to be of good moral character, and a conviction meant that you weren't. So now a lot of these bills kind of went by the way. Some of those characteristics went by the wayside. So with these new bills, and I would say there was like a dozen bills associated with jail and prison reform. But just so you get an idea, on this bill. This package of bills, these 4 bills, they were introduced in the House in April, bipartisan, in April of 2019. So at the beginning of this particular legislative session, they didn't get referred out of the committee. They got moved to they were in a committee for licensing, and then they got moved to the Ways and Means Committee not until May of 2020. So the bill sat there for over a year without a whole lot happening. It came out, went to the Ways and Means Committee, and it had some substitutions in it then, and it went to the whole House in September of 20, and it was passed. It was passed with 365 yeses and 106 noes. It was a very bipartisan bill, but it passed in September. But it didn't get pushed on to the Senate until the end of September. And then there it sat in the Senate. And in December, on December 10th, the Senate rules were suspended. So like we talked before, how you don't have to use all the rules. So the rules were suspended. They could pass it immediately, so with immediate effect, and it all happened, and it was signed by the governor on the 4th. So this is good legislation. We would have loved to see these kind of bills and this kind of stuff come together earlier, but it didn't happen because basically they were spending the year picking sides so that we would all know who to vote for in November. And after November, regardless of whether they were out, term limited or whatever, they were able to seriously come together and pass good legislation. And probably had they been able to come together before, they could have done the same thing. But we have to look at the realities of politics and political parties, and that's one of them. So that's mostly what I had to talk about with good bills and good things that can happen.